Welcome to EJH British Cars, and today we're going to get started on the OverDrive unit for the TR2. And as you recall, we took it off the transmission a couple of episodes ago and rebuilt the transmission, so we're on to that. So let's get started. So here's the OverDrive unit. We haven't started on it, but we're going to, first we're going to disassemble the outside. So we're going to take the drive flange off, the OverDrive solenoid. We'll probably pull this vent off. We'll get this plug open. This is the plunger for the OverDrive switch. And we'll also get this plate off of here. Probably pull this actuating arm off the OverDrive system, and we'll pull the plug off the bottom and get the bottom opened up. Alright, that's why it's handy to have little blocks of wood laying around. Well, that seems to be well and truly on there. Well, I got it started to move, but as you can see, this is super tight. I don't know whether somebody's got Loctite on it or something. I don't know. But it should not be on that tight. That these things should just be a nice machine fit and just pull off. So I don't know what's up with that. We will have to investigate further as time goes on. So that's the tail shaft flange off. The OverDrive is spinning nicely. I'm starting to collect tools and our parts in this box. I just pulled these springs. Those just lifted out. And we can take this speedometer drive out next. See, that's a special bolt with a pin in it, or a pin on the end, so you don't want to lose that. Oh, well, there's a surprise. That came right out. And the gear looks like it's in good shape, so that's good. Put those in the box. And then, let's get this apart. Those look like 5/16. There we go. Well, it's just enough room to get a 1/4-inch drive socket in there. We'll have to test this solenoid later, make sure it's any good. These solenoids are 2-stage, so if they get out of adjustment, it never comes off that second stage, and then they can burn up that the windings really easily. You can see that you got to be able to bend off that shaft just a little bit to clear the rubber on the top. Well, there's the solenoid out. I kind of like to leave the pieces in the parts that they came from, so it's just easier to figure out what goes where when you go to put this together a couple of months from now. So then the plunger just rotates out. It actually has a rubber boot, or it did. This one's all falling to pieces in my hand. But there's the plunger. And make sure you keep that. You can get the other bits, the rubber boots and all. And let's get this plate off. So it looks like probably 4 1/2-inch bolts or nuts, or a bit of both. Alright, so after you get the actuating arm off and these 2 nuts out, there's 2 long bolts here because that's what's holding these accumulator springs in place. So you want to take those out evenly. There we go. So there's my plate. And these are the accumulator springs. And you can see why you need to use the screws to unbolt that. This thing is huge. So I'm going to take the brass plug out of the bottom next. This is a C-wrench, an adjustable C-wrench, kinda. I bought it at Harbor Freight years ago, and the last time I went looking for them, I couldn't find them even with the part number. So they came like 3 different sizes. Anyhow, but I use them mostly just to take the brass valve off of OverDrive units. It just, get it to hook under one of the notches. Oh! And there it is. So I suppose you can use a big monkey wrench or use a drift but there's a reason that most of these OverDrive plugs are really beat up when you get them. This one's actually in pretty good shape. Got a little bit of scarring on it, but not much. Just the plug. And these are some magnets that are in the bottom, just to catch any metal, steel swarf that floats around in there. So we're going to make sure we're going to clean all this up well before we put it back together, but we won't do that right now. And then there's a screen that just lifts out. You can see how much gunk's on that. And that will expose the pump and the pump body and all that. So the next thing I'm going to do is take these two bridges off. Oh, and they have safety locks on them. So we're going to take these two bridges off next. And these have little locking fingers on them. So we need to get up. Alright, next we can take these pistons out. Now we're pulling against a vacuum. And there's the two pistons out. So we need to remove the valve, which is under this small bolt right here. So there's that body, and then we need to take a magnet to pull the spring in. There's a ball in the, well, so there's the body, there's the valve, or the spring, and there's the actual valve, which is just a little sort of T-shaped turning. Definitely don't want to lose that. These parts are really hard to find if you lose one. And I think they changed from imperial to metric at some point as well, which is not helpful. So we've got that out. Let's see what's next. And next we need to take these two flathead screws out. And they're not too bad. I think we probably need to take that centerpiece out. Let me check the book. So to pull this pump body, I've had to make this adapter. So this is 7/16 fine on this end, which screws into the pump body. And then the other end is 5/8 fine, I think it was. Well, it's going to be whatever your puller is what it's the bottom line. And that screws in like that. And then we'll see if it'll come out. And there it is. Ta-da! Now the real question is, how does the bore look? So the bore in the pump body, which I'm sure you cannot see, looks pretty good. Let's see if we can get the plunger out of here. So I don't know how well this will show up, but it's got here, you can see it's shiny. And the same thing here, I suppose that's where it's getting pushed from the direction of rotation. Actually, it doesn't look too bad. Now that we've got all this front section undone, it's time to take off the tail shaft, for lack of a better term, and that is just this series of bolts going all the way around, and most of these are well hidden. You can only get them with an open end wrench, so that's going to take a bit of time. Get really spoiled by power sockets and the like, but you know, you just have to do it the old-fashioned way sometimes. So I've done a few Really gentle taps with the soft face mallet onto the ears of the transmission mount. And that's gotten this push free. This is where all the sun gear cluster and the like is. Alright, so the next thing it says is to remove the brake ring, which is kind of a snug fit, so I've just been kind of gently easing it along. You want to make sure you push it out square, because it does fit, and there are no gaskets. I'm not even really supposed to use gasket sealer reassembling this, so it's just a really snug fit that keeps it oil tight, so you need to be careful not to bugger it up. So as you can see, I'm just tapping lightly, working my way back and forth. It's pretty easy to see. There we go, that's loose. Yeah, it comes out about 1/8 of an inch at a time. And it goes, this has a taper going this way, and the taper goes towards the tail shaft. So taper, tail shaft. We'll need to remember that. Now supposedly, there we go. This whole carrier section comes out. And this is where you want to really start doing inspectioning. That this is a friction material. These are the clutches, so you want to look to see how much friction material is left between the top of the rivets and the face of the material. And this one looks pretty healthy, so I'm happy about that. You also want to look for any mechanical damage or pieces missing. But this one all looks pretty clean. There's a bearing right here as well. The sun gear was in the center. We took that out to start with, and I took this clip off, which was down in here. I expect that's what's holding that bearing in, but I don't think we got a new bearing with the kit, so, and this one doesn't feel like it's got anything wrong with it. So let's just keep that aside. And then these are the sun gears, or the planetary gears, excuse me. The center gear is the sun gear, the planetary gears orbit it. I have seen overdrives where these pins were pushed out. These all look secure. It really buggers it out if it gets pushed out, but that's from being driven way too hard. And I think that this is directly attached. This is one piece with this tail shaft. And we do have a new rear bearing there and a new rear seal. And I think this needs to be pushed out, that the bearing is pushed into the casing. So I'm going to go take that in to the garage and put it on the press and see if we can't move that. So I lifted the planetary gears out and then took it in the shop, mounted it this way in the press, supported it under the ring of here, and it pushed out fairly easily. And you can see there's another spacer here that goes against the bearing. Well, I'm starting to see why that tail shaft came off so hard. There's a bunch of boogery right there. I don't know what somebody did to that. Put a gear splitter in there, and that's going to bring that out. This is the sprung clutch, which is these series of roller bearings, and this inner surface is ramped. A little ramp for each one of these bearings so that it locks up in one direction. The direction that power is going through. This is why you're not supposed to engage the overdrive in reverse, because it just really messes with this thing. Apparently. Never done it myself, but that's what I keep hearing. Anyway, I digress. So the next thing we can do is pull this seal out of here. Alright, so I got the seal out, just put it on the edge and just using a regular gasket popper. So there's the bearing down here and it comes out this side, so I just put it flat on the bench. It's got a long punch and it's a tight fit, but it's not crazy tight. And so it's just a matter of working that out. It'd be even easier if I had a center punch that was about 4 inches longer, but I probably do somewhere, but too lazy to go find one. So there it is. It just touches the workbench. So there's the bearing out. So that is that completely disassembled. So I'm going to go take some lacquer thinner or something and get this leftover gasket sealer out of here, and then we'll put the new bearing in the end. Alright, got this all cleaned up. The easiest thing was just to take a cloth rag, well soaked, and wipe this whole thing down to get some lacquer thinner on the stuff, and then letting it set. I started working the flat areas first, and then in these crevices I've got a fairly soft small wire brush, and that seems to have cleaned it up pretty well. So next we want to put the bearing back in, so I'm going to put it on these blocks so that the studs are just off the table. The bearing does not seem to have it this side up, so we just drop that in there, and if you look about halfway down there's a little shelf, and that's what it's sitting on right there, and we should be able to work that in. If you have a hard time getting it started, you could always use a socket so you could, like that. There we go. How solid that sounds. So that's all the way in, and then you do not want to put the seal in yet, because you're going to have to push this back through the bearing. It means you're going to have to put a socket in here to hold the edge of the bearing so it doesn't just push the bearing back out. Alright, so I thought I'd change out this vent. So that's just a 7/16 inch wrench, fits the two flats, and that just screws out. Nothing very fancy about that. There isn't any need to go crazy with this stuff. Mostly you want to make sure it gets down into the bottom of the thread channel. Here. I suppose if you really wanted to get fussy, you could take just a flat file and touch those flats a little bit, and that would solve that problem. So this is the operating valve assembly. This one's 10 millimeter, but they seem to, early cars are imperial and later cars are metric, and it's a 12 point. Comes off pretty easy. It's almost like somebody used a pair of pliers on this one at some point in time. Worked it up pretty good. The problem you're going to have is that this part is impossible to find. No one makes it. I suppose it never really wears out. As it wears out, people just bugger it up. And there's a ball bearing in the very end, which I've managed to drop on the floor. But we have new bearings for it, so that's okay. And if you look down the hole, you can just see the end of the rod, which is what is actuated by the lever arm here. There's the other end of it down there, right there, and that pushes up when the OverDrive unit operates. Oh. My kit came with 2 new bearings, So we'll put a new one in. And I have a feeling it may have had a new spring. Operating valve spring. So we'll put a new one of those in too. I don't remember what exactly came with the kit. I knew from past experience that I was going to want to replace things like this. So I may have just ordered a new one offhand just to have it. I know that the pump plunger and stuff does not come with the kit, but I ordered a new one of those because I've had problems in the past. Alright, and then this has a copper washer seal on it. It looks like it's in good shape. Put that bit in there. And do it horizontally so these bits won't all fall apart from each other. You know, get wedged up sideways in there as you're assembling them. And that gets not crazy tight. Oh, probably like 10 or 15 foot-pounds. Something like that, just enough to seal that copper washer. And then I have to drive this on, so I have to tap it off. Which, it's coming. And that's what happens when people, you know, instead of having a 12-point socket, I mean, a 12-point socket's a really normal thing, and instead they used a pair of pliers and buggered it up. It's annoying. Alright, on to the next piece. Alright, so next we're going to need to get this bearing off the analyst. So we're going to go in with the bearing clamshells again and go in on the press. And that's the new one. This is a slightly bigger bearing than was in the tail shaft, so you know, I don't think you can mix them up. There's enough size difference that one's just not going to fit where the other one does. But you guys have been watching me push that on off too much, so I'm going to go do that and then we'll get back. So this recording is getting pretty long, so I'm going to break it here, and the next part will be the reassembly of the OverDrive. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you later.